So I'm Krissy, and my full name is Rabino. I'm a software engineer by day, and I teach a particular type of social dance from Brazil called Zouk at night as well. I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, but I live in London and have been for the last 5 years or so. A thing called Women Hack for Nonprofits. It was London Tech Week. Maybe a couple of years ago, a year ago, I can't keep track anymore. It was London Tech Week, and I saw something on my Twitter feed that said women hack for nonprofits, and I mean that whole thing in itself sounds pretty awesome. So I decided to go explore it, and I thought it was like a one evening hackathon or hack day where we create projects for one nonprofit cause. And I was really scared about that because I'd never really been to a hack day either. But for some reason I felt courageous and like I would go and try something that scared me for London Tech Week. And I got there and it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a hack day. It was actually a set of talks and just a monthly meetup they have. And the org was very young, so I think they'd only been active for about 2 months.
Okay.
And yeah, it was just an interesting night because I got there feeling awkward, trying to find the food. And then when I sat down and just listened to the presentations, so it was some groups kind of presenting what they were working on and some non-for-profits presenting pictures for projects they needed working on. And I found myself doing a strange thing a lot. I found myself raising my hand and speaking out loud. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? But I had lots of questions. I had loads of questions, and I had some replies to some questions as well that the audience were asking during the Q&A session. And yeah, I just found myself being much more vocal than I expected to be at something very new to me. And yeah, it all kickstarted from there. So I am now so a year or two later, I'm now part of the board at Women Hack for Nonprofits. And it is a very big part of my life right now. Okay, so for one, I think mine was a mix of just feeling a bit introverted and antisocial, but also not really understanding the point of going to, of networking in the tech scene and kind of meeting other people in the tech scene. I didn't really get why it was so important. I just thought, okay, I code and work with tech in my day job, like from 9 to 5 or whatever it is. Why would I then spend my spare hours, like kind of doing the same thing or within the same realm? And I was really wrong, but so it was kind of a mix of not really understanding why I should do it and also being socially awkward. And yeah, so my advice would be to really kind of have a think, like speak to people, speak to your colleagues, speak to people about their experiences with tech meetups. Go to one, just, there's, I guess, 2 ways you could do something. You could kind of assume something is the way it is, or you could just try it out, just pull yourself to one and just be like, look, you know what, for the sake of it, I'm just going to check out what it's like to go to a tech meetup. And, it is what you make of it. So sometimes it might be scary and, it'll take a while. So you might have to go to 2 or 3 for it to be comfortable and actually make sense. But I really encourage you to just step out of your comfort zone, talk to someone, and really just try to absorb the people around you, because when you go to these tech meetups, you are kind of putting yourself somewhere where you are surrounded by lots of skill, lots of talent, experience, a diverse amount of people, whereas in your day job, you're surrounded by the same people, for hours. And I'm really lucky because I work with very smart, friendly, like a smart, friendly, and talented bunch. But, you always need that variety. It's like, reading books. You wouldn't want to read the same book over and over again. You have to read a diverse amount of books to really expand your knowledge and get in there. And the beauty about London, especially like big cities like London, is it's abundant. There's different types of meetups. It's a place where you can start your own if you really want to. And having online tools like Slack, like Meetup.com, and that sort of thing, it makes it really easy to reach out to the tech community and just either speak to them, grow a network of people, like a support network. So something I really like that was like a side effect of everything was I've created my own support network. It's kind of like my own Stack Overflow slash, I don't know, tech therapy group slash social, like new social group. All because I kind of went out there, met a few people, realized people aren't as scary as I thought they were, and actually are really nice. And I'm constantly inspired by these new people I've met. So in the same light, while they achieve things, it really pushes my bar up, because when you're surrounded by people who are achieving cool things, making neat things, sharing them, you get inspired to kind of get off your bum and do that yourself. So yeah, many, many reasons that you should put yourself out of your comfort zone, expose yourself to new people and new sources of inspiration. And yeah, just have faith that people aren't as scary as you think they are. So this is where I tried to break down the timeline without missing a bit. So I mentioned how I found Women Hack for nonprofits. And then, yeah, I put my hand up. I kind of, got noticed I wasn't a wallflower. And then I kept going. And slowly, I guess I started contributing and then being on the board, but also being within the Slack community and just keeping in the loop with what everyone was saying and sharing really kind of opened me up to many avenues. So one thing, there's one of the members is Marissa, and it was a very casual Slack announcement that there was this thing coming up called Empower Hack, which is a hackathon for refugee women and girls. A very focused hackathon. In such a big issue, it's very hard to tackle it as a whole. So there are little sub-issues within the refugee crisis that aren't so prioritized. So I really like the sound of this hackathon because it was centering on issues that affected women and girls specifically, who each have their own sensitive types of issues like domestic violence and education and different types of things based on culture. So it really interested me, and she said, there's this hackathon coming up. Who wants to come? And a few people expressed interest, including myself. And again, it was one of those things that scared me because I found Women Hack for Nonprofits thinking it was a hackathon, but it wasn't. And I still hadn't participated in a hackathon. So I was, I was really scared, but I mean, the cause was just too cool to let being scared stop me from doing that. So I went, and I spent Saturday just like I was a sponge. It was crazy. I was just an absolute sponge. They had a really unique way of doing hackathons. I found out after the fact, by people who actually went to hackathons on a regular basis. And I was just so educated in the first half of Saturday, just on the refugee crisis with something like this, where you're building apps to extend, outside of the hackathon. They really need to educate you on the subject matter. So the first half of Saturday, it was like, okay, what's happening? When do I hack? When do I code? But it was just education. And then we formed some kind of team, and I met people through that. And it turned out that my team had Annika, who was a great Python developer, and so I learned Python within the span of a weekend, or well, not Python itself, but I got to dabble with it. Being more so a Ruby developer, it was just kind of an interesting kind of splash of Django and Python that I had to immerse myself with during the weekend. But because I had formed this ad hoc team that was super supportive, it was just really great. But I mean, the weekend went really fast, and that's a whole topic in itself. But after that, at the end of the hackathon, I had a bit of wine, and the organizers asked if there was anything we wanted to express and share about the event. And because I'd had a little bit of wine and I was so inspired by what I had just experienced in one entire weekend, I got up there and I held the mic, and I kind of gave a little soppy speech about how amazing the whole thing was. And I also really noticed a synergy between Women Hack for Nonprofits and this event. I guess because Women Hack for Nonprofits was really about encouraging women to get out there and build things and be more present in the tech community, contributing to open source projects, blogging, that sort of thing. And then here's one group who really needed volunteers in tech for a good cause, focusing on women's issues. So it wasn't necessarily, gender restricted, but it just made so much sense to get women hacking for women. So I just said this really, soppy speech, and then I said, I'm from a group called Women Hack for Nonprofits, and I think you guys should do something together. And Han, one of the organizers, was really keen on hooking the two orgs up somehow and just kind of partnering. And, in this, from what was one little tiny speech and one little weekend, since then, Empower Hack and Women Hack for Nonprofits have formed this partnership, and it's a really nice cross-collaborative culture. For example, the last Empower Hack this weekend, which was the second one in London, Women Hack for Nonprofits gave 2 workshops to teach people who probably aren't familiar with code, just kind of introduce them to the world of coding in a nice kind of friendly way. So I gave one introducing people to Ruby and just like general coding concepts and basics. And I did it through my love of sloths. Somehow I managed to infuse sloths in there. And because I'm a bit of a fan of sloths. So I have Sloth Hilda here already, just in case I got a bit nervous for this interview. But so I managed to give that. Another board member from Women Hack gave an introduction to HTML and CSS and Grunt and deploying a website. So, we were able to partner and give these really insightful workshops to people who probably don't even use tech on a regular basis. So we had a lot of people from the hackathon that work in like the health and humanitarian sector. And that's also something I really love about this type of hackathon. It's really inclusive and really prioritizes the domain, and it's not just coding for the sake of coding. Through that, through Women Hack for Nonprofits, Empower Hack, my tech community in London here has just quadrupled, and you have people from Empower Hack coming to Women Hack because they really like the idea of pushing themselves to learn more about tech in a supportive environment. You have people from Women Hack really be inspired by the Empower Hack mission and kind of going there. I was part of Acorn Hack, all these hacks for someone who was scared of this word hackathon, like just surrounded by hacks right now. I was part of Acorn Hack as well, which was referred to in one of the communities, I can't even remember which is a hackathon focused on girls aged 12 to 19. Obviously there's a big gender gap in tech, and in order to address it, there are a lot of ways to address this, but an obvious way to address this is early, and making sure that education is considering it, making sure that young girls are inspired to work in the STEM industry. There's a lady called Ella Nasanel, and she's doing wonders with a group called Acorn Aspirations, and she's basically focusing on young entrepreneurs and making them really passionate about tech and being comfortable working in tech. So I went to that hackathon where I met people from Empower Hack, Women Hack, and even more amazing people that maybe I Twitter stalk sometimes because, they're just really cool, and lots of great women in tech that are sort of role models for me, meeting them in real life. So really, it's just this crazy, I call it lily pads. So I really compare it to lily pads. Like once you get out there, it's like communities and opportunities, and if you just decide to be present, if you just decide to leap from one to the other, you will find yourself on a really interesting journey, meeting lots of people, and it's pretty neat. All 3 different groups that I've spoken about, Women Hack for Nonprofits really encourages people already within the tech scene to push themselves and be a bit more active with the participation in the tech community. But it also provides support and workshops and resources for, especially for women who are interested in switching to a career in tech. I did mention that I teach a type of social dance right at the beginning of the interview, and I have different types of networks. So my Twitter network is a lot of my dev community, and then my Facebook network is a lot of my, my social community and my, my friends back home in Sydney, but also a lot of my dance scene. So I've built a separate network on Facebook of the dance communities that I've been part of in both Sydney and London. And I never used to share a lot of my tech life. But once I started getting lots of women especially approach me because they saw that I was, me, I'm really, I'm just Chris, like who they come to sometimes, and we just hang out when we go dancing. But they see me kind of being part of software engineering and this tech community, and I guess me being, this tiny little girl and not some, tall man in a suit, or like some kind of your typical stereotype of like a geek that they portray in movies, like hunched over a computer. They kind of, there's something in them that goes, wow, okay, that's Chris, and she codes. And so I've had people approach me, both private message me or come to me in real life in a club on the dance floor or after my class, and just kind of shyly approach me and say, Chris, I noticed that you have something to do with coding. If I were interested in switching to career in tech, or if I were interested in learning a little bit of code, is it too late for me? Where do I start? Can you help me? And I don't think they understand how happy it makes me. But now I've been actually proactive because of this really surprising response from individuals I wouldn't have expected it from. I've decided to be more sharey on Facebook. So now everything I do, related to the tech scene, especially now that it's much more social, because my tech life is so much more social and I guess approachable and not siloed in front of a computer. There's not so much you can post on somewhere like Facebook about today I went to work and I coded. But I mean, things like these hackathons, things like these communities that I'm part of that are doing really great stuff to make tech much more inclusive. That's stuff that, I don't know, is just you just can't help but want to share that kind of stuff. And yeah, so the Ruby workshop was interesting. So these people that have approached me, I would always send them links. I would always kind of, okay, if you want to learn, there's Code Academy, there's this. You can always start just doing some things online to see if it's the thing for you. But I think what's much more effective for people who haven't been in the tech scene before and they're trying to understand if code is the right thing for them, or tech is the right thing for them, I think they need to be in a really positive environment that's collaborative, that is human, that is puts things in context where they can ask questions, with an actual person and feel supported. So physical events like this workshop that was in a space, with really positive people, where the end goal was to prepare people for a hackathon for refugees. I think it was just one of those things that you can't deny. There's so many motivation factors there. And it was free, and it was hey guys, I'm teaching Ruby, and there'll be sloths in it. It was an angle that wasn't so daunting, that wasn't so, okay, we're going to learn how to code and, conditional logic and, object-oriented programming. And, if I threw those terms in, I think it's enough jargon to kind of sway anyone from believing in themselves that they can learn something new. Code in itself and programming is just like learning a language. But if someone were to say, okay, if you're going to learn, Cantonese, then, there's all these things to think about. It would probably overwhelm me, and I'd feel really intimidated to just start and to just show up. So for me, showing up is such a big deal, and one of the hardest things to do, and one of the things that I never used to do. Just showing up, just kind of knowing things are happening, but not, you know, getting off my bum and actually going to them. And I think that is a really important thing. So to see a lot of, you know, friends from my dance scene just kind of contact me, and seeing a good percentage of them show up. I mean, some people couldn't make it. So there were lots more that were interested, but they couldn't make it for various reasons. But to see a good percentage of them come and enjoy it was a big deal for me. Like, you know, I guess I was a bit nervous, thinking, okay, they'll arrive, and then by the end of the event, they'll be like, whoa, that's a bit too much for me, or no, I don't really like this. But the response was the complete opposite. It was, wow, okay, that was challenging, but you know what? I think I get it. And, you know, one of the girls who came, she said that she's usually surrounded by software engineers, like her friends, her ex-boyfriend, I think, was a software engineer, and she used to think it was really boring. She was curious about it because she's a single mom, and she's been looking for, I guess, a career change that will let her have a bit more flexible hours and spend more time with her daughter. And she thinks she's a very logical person, so she thought code was, you know, an option, but she always had the stereotype of it because of, I guess, the types of people, and you know, usually male. They probably talk a lot about the command line. I have no idea, but for some reason, she thought software engineering was super boring. And then she came to this class and she said, no, I get it. It's just like solving puzzles, you know, and I actually really enjoyed it. And what I really loved was I saw her helping people around her by the end of the workshop. She was actually assisting people who actually had maybe even touched code before, and she hadn't touched it at all. So, yeah. Just these types of things really inspire me to share more and just be a little bit more proactive about that, just because it's really nice to see the result. I think that learning by teaching is a big reason I actually started kind of facing my fears. You know, you ask anyone, I used to be so scared of public speaking, and I would always talk about my inner lamb that used to kind of like, and it still comes up actually, but people claim that they don't hear it, but I definitely hear and feel it. At some point when you're standing in front of everyone and you realize that you're speaking to a huge amount of people, and then for some reason your voice just starts to become a lamb. So that's my inner lamb, and I'm, you know, public speaking for me is always terrifying, but the thing that pushes me to do workshops, public speaking, you know, tech talks, blogging, is because I firmly believe that you learn a lot more by helping other people. So for example, doing this Ruby workshop, you know, Ruby in itself, like I've you know, been familiar with the language for a few years, but at my current workplace, you know, it's a very big polyglot culture. So polyglot means that you kind of work with a lot of different languages. And in fact, at my current workplace, I do a lot of Cold Fusion, which is a very old school language made by the Adobe people. And it's a little bit legacy in that, you know, not many modern companies would use it. And so because, you know, my workplace was sort of a hybrid Cold Fusion / Ruby, JavaScript company, I, you know, really pushed to learn more Ruby. So I kind of took it upon myself to teach myself Ruby in my time there, so in the last 5 years, and, you know, just work on that a little bit more. But I guess it's something that, you know, within a business culture where you're focusing on business requirements and, you know, just little things, there's only so much you can do and so much you can focus on the one thing. So I guess I haven't had the opportunity to focus on Ruby as much as I wanted to in my day job. So preparing this workshop of basics and, you know, like the fundamentals of Ruby and programming was just really valuable for me, because you have to kind of, you know, prepare the content. You have to revise like little tiny basics that you always, you know, because you're coding now in the big product context, you tend to like not really think about the basics so much, but it really, really helps to revise them and to collate them in a way that makes sense, that someone else who's not even heard of these would understand them. And so it's just this way of like studying and revision to prepare a workshop for other people. That's really valuable for yourself as well as those people. So I didn't really understand that until I started preparing the workshop. And now I'm just like, oh, I need to do this more. So I would love to do one for Rails, just to kind of, create, because Ruby in itself, so just for anyone watching, Ruby is, a programming language. Rails is a framework. So someone, created their own kind of program to make it easier to build websites using the Ruby language, and they called it Ruby on Rails. So a lot of new people might not know the difference, but it's so I think they're two very separate topics, but a lot of people think that as soon as they learn Ruby, they learn Rails. So I have a Ruby workshop prepared, and it's online, it's open source, it's just available for people to pick up and try go through if they want to. And I would love to make a Rails one. Yeah, I'm not sure what more I can do forward from this, because the things that have happened have all been very spontaneous. I remember when you posed the idea to me, and I think you're a little bit nervous about the whole thing, because again, it's you also doing something new, and I think it's a great idea. Everyone has a voice and a story to tell, and it's about time we started getting those stories told and shared. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of it.